Stop lying and speak the truth. So begins our text from St. Paul's letter to his friends in Ephesus. If you follow the news at all, you're aware that truth, or lack of it, is a big deal in our life as a nation. We hear often of fact-checking as politicians lie routinely and use the term fake news for anything that makes them look bad. A recent former president, whom I will not name, once said to his followers, "Remember, what you're seeing and what you're reading is not what's happening." Truth was a major issue throughout biblical history as well. The Hebrew prophets repeatedly urged God's people to worship and obey the true God rather than the false gods, the idols that they found so attractive. Jesus was all about truth. He said to his disciples, "I am the truth, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." Jesus said to Pontius Pilate, who was about to condemn him to death, "Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice." And Pilate famously replied, "What is truth?" Showing that a cynical attitude toward truth by government officials is nothing new. So it's very much in the biblical tradition when Paul insists that followers of Jesus be people of the truth. He elaborates what he means a few verses later. "Let no evil talk come out of your mouths, but only what is useful for building others up as there is need, so that your words may give grace to those who hear." A little earlier in this chapter, Paul calls it speaking the truth in love. Sounds great. Of course, we should all tell the truth in a loving way. Who could disagree with that? Turns out that speaking the truth is easy to talk about and complicated to actually do. Consider these examples. Ted, a habitual gossip, spreads a story that results in outing of an acquaintance, resulting in a lot of hurt and trouble. When confronted about his behavior, he retorts, "Well, it's true, isn't it?" Or suppose your colleague at work, Travis, has some clout in the office and you'd like to stay on his good side. He's an aggressive type that has a habit of getting away with stuff. One morning he gives an important presentation and lays an egg, obviously not prepared. Shortly after he's done and everyone is relieved that it's over, Travis walks up to you in the hall and asks, "How to do?" One of my favorite authors, Lewis Smedes, has an outline to help us think through the complications of what it means to speak the truth in love. And if I could have the slide displayed now. All you have to do, Smedes writes, is tell the right truth to the right person at the right time for the right reason in the right way. First, the right truth. Not every truth is mine to tell. When Jason learned that his sister and her husband were expecting, he called his mom right away to share the happy news. In so doing, he robbed his sister of the joy of breaking the news to her mom in her own way, in her own time. It was the truth. But with a little discernment, Jason would have realized that it was not his truth to tell. What is my truth to tell? Examples: information that someone needs in order to make a good decision. Sharing my concern with a friend who I can see is headed for trouble. Revealing my feelings that you need to know in order to improve our relationship. In summary, the truth that Paul calls what is useful for building others up. So it's important to tell the right truth, but also to tell the right truth to the right person. If you saw the movie A Few Good Men, you may recall the stunning courtroom scene where the Navy prosecutor, played by Tom Cruise, is interrogating the arrogant Marine colonel, played by Jack Nicholson. The questioning has turned into a shouting match. And at one point, the prosecutor says, "I want the truth." And the colonel shoots back, "You can't handle the truth." Well, there are some people who can't handle the truth, but in a different sense from what the colonel had in mind. Some people mishandle the truth in that they distort it, see it in the worst possible light, use it to hurt and belittle and demean others. Where I come from, such people are called malicious gossips. Truth is just not safe with them, so you have to be careful in what you tell some people. So it's important to tell the right truth to the right person at the right time. Suppose I'm proud of the promotion my nephew got at work, and I want to share it with my friend. But I'm aware that she's bummed because her son just lost his job. So I can wait to talk about my nephew's success with her. So I want to tell the right truth to the right person at the right time for the right reason. Sandra is working to get a promotion, doing all the right things. A colleague, Jim, is angling for the same job. He's really good at what he does, and Sandra would love to find some sort of competitive advantage. One night, Sandra finds herself in the same bar with Jim, and she sees him acting like a real jerk after he's had too much to drink. Finally, he's ejected from the bar. Wow, she thinks, what a stroke of luck. She could casually tell it to a couple of people at work, and it would get back to management, of course. It's a juicy story, and it's true. She saw it all. Some might jump at that chance. But wouldn't that be telling a truth for the wrong reason? I think Paul would say that as followers of Christ, we can be better than that. Remember his criterion from our text. Say only what is useful for building others up, as there is need, so that your words might give grace to those who hear. So I want to tell the right truth to the right person at the right time for the right reason, but also in the right way. Two patients got a diagnosis of breast cancer on the same day. For one, the doctor walked in and said, unfortunately, the test results showed a malignancy. He outlined treatment options, said, you can stop by the front desk for your next appointment, and walked out, leaving the stunned patient by herself. The doctor's manner was cool and detached, professional in the worst way. Another patient received a similar diagnosis. Her doctor sat down with her and her husband and talked a bit about why he had become a physician and what he believed in. He said one thing he believed in was the power of hope. The lump was malignant, he said, but from years of observing these conditions, he thought there was good reason to stay hopeful. A similar diagnosis, but how it was talked about made a big difference. Telling the truth in the right way also applies to something else Paul said in this passage. When you're angry, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger. He's not against being angry. That's a natural human emotion. But he is encouraging us to deal with it properly and responsibly. Responsibility means owning your feeling, not saying, "You make me so mad," but instead, "I feel angry when you..." Even better, recognizing that anger is often a cover for a more vulnerable feeling. I may react with anger when I'm really feeling scared or hurt or embarrassed. I could talk about that underlying feeling. I really felt hurt when you said that. And don't let the sun go down on your anger, Paul says. It's a good idea often to allow time to cool off, but don't let it fester. At this point, you may be thinking, this business of telling the truth consistently is not only complicated, it's a high bar. I don't know if I can live up to it. You're right. You can't. Neither can I. At least not in our own strength. But that's not what Paul is expecting us to do. In this letter to the Ephesians, as in other letters Paul writes, he does not just tell them a bunch of things they should do and leave them on their own to do them. Rather, and this may be the most important thing I have learned about Paul's style, he first tells them who they are. Who they are. And then he tells them what to do. Who they are first, and then what to do. So he writes earlier, I urge you to live a life worthy of the calling you have received. God has given you new life in Christ, he says. You have the power of Christ, the love of Christ within you. You belong to Christ, and here is what that means for how you ought to live. In other words, you're a follower of Jesus, so act like it. And that means when we are asked to speak the truth in love, as we've seen, that's asking a lot. But we aren't expected to do it on our own, but rather by the power of Christ within us. And that power is not reserved for spiritual superstars. It's available to any of us as we trust God to empower us to do and say the right thing. You may recall that when someone joins this church, they are asked to make certain commitments to being a faithful follower of Jesus. And the standard answer is, I will with God's help. Again, you aren't expected to do it on your own. The real key to being appropriately truthful is to have the sensitivity and concern for people that Jesus exemplified. We can pray for this attitude of Christ to be active in our minds. And we can pray for wisdom to discern what to say or not to say in difficult situations. We have a promise in the book of James that if anyone needs wisdom, they can ask for it, and God will provide the wisdom generously. We can trust God not to let us down. And that's the truth.